This is Jason Mudd with Axia Public Relations. I'm your host from On Top of PR. And in this episode, we're talking to Del Galloway. Del is the former president and head of the Public Relations Society of America. He's currently with Wells Fargo, and he's going to talk to us about all the crazy issues that are going on in 2020 and how to be a trusted advisor throughout all of these corners and twists and complications. He's also going to share a little bit about the upcoming Public Relations Society of America International Conference, and he's going to share about the PRSA College of Fellows. And I just think this is a great episode. You're going to love it. I'm glad you're tuning in. If you like what you hear today, be sure to subscribe and get notified when we have new episodes drop. Thanks for watching. Here we go.
Welcome to On Top of PR with Jason Mudd, presented by Review Maxer.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of On Top of PR. I'm your host, Jason Mudd, and today I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Del Galloway. Del, welcome to the show.
Jason, thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
I'm glad you're here. So, Del, I was thinking about you as we were preparing for this recording. You and I met when I first graduated from college and was entering the PR profession. You were one of the first people I met, and of course, one of the nicest and most giving people. And so when we started putting this show together on Top PR, I thought of you. And of course, you continue to give back and volunteer, including your role at the University of Florida. And as you just shared with me, you are the chair for the International Conference for the Public Relations Society of America, where you were previously its top leader for the association. So Del, other than that, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background so that our audience gets familiar with you before we jump in.
Well, Jason, thank you. And that was very kind, that introduction. And I remember our meeting in Jacksonville, Florida back in, a while back. So, yeah, I am a graduate of the University of Florida. Go Gators.
Go Gators.
But my career has spanned the agency world, corporate, nonprofit, education, and back to corporate. Mm-hmm. After graduating from UF, I was with Young and Ruby Cam Zemp, a big agency down in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, Y&R now, right?
I'm sorry?
They call it Y&R now, right?
That's right. And the big account back in those days was Publix.
Oh, good.
And then continued my career with another agency, and then took a dive into the corporate world. I was with a division, a business unit of AT&T called AT&T American Transtech, which Jason, you'll remember was headquartered in Jacksonville. At the time, it was the largest private employer in the city with more than 5,000 employees. And then I went back to the agency world, and we sold that agency, Husk, Jennings, Galloway and Partners, in downtown Jacksonville in 2005. And at the age of 45-ish, I suddenly did not know what was next. So after taking about 6 months off and enjoying waking up without an alarm, I always felt like that would be one of life's biggest luxuries. And I discovered it was great, but you can fill a lot of nothing with a lot of nothing. Mm-hmm. And so I accepted an offer from a headhunter to interview for a position in Washington, D.C., a city I've always loved. And I accepted the job and was with the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Okay.
Left that, went to United Way Worldwide, the world's largest privately funded nonprofit. And from there, I went to Wells Fargo, where I am currently, and I lead communications for the Atlantic region of Wells Fargo. And for us, that means Maryland, DC, Virginia, North Carolina. And within the last year, I'm now operating bi-coastal. I have folks in California and LA that I have the pleasure of working with as well.
Great. Wow. Well, personally, I'm 44 years old, and I couldn't imagine already having or close to selling my agency and starting the next chapter of my life. And obviously you were successful in doing that. So congratulations to you there. Let's just pick up real quick on Wells Fargo. The world doesn't need to know from us about COVID-19 and how it has changed and how it's impacted the economy and the wellness of our communities. How has that impacted you and your communications leadership and candidly, your 2020 corporate communications plans.
Yeah, well, and so across the organization, Wells Fargo continues to work from home, safety first.
Mhm.
We about every month out, we'll receive a message of, okay, we're going to push another month out. So right now it's into October.
Okay.
Interestingly, we've looked at the landscape and the number of companies who are saying we may never go back to work.
Right.
In terms of an actual office building, people have discovered the benefits of virtual, but it also has its challenges, right?
Mhm.
Because it's, I think, particularly from a leadership communication perspective, and creating that connectivity, that sticky factor, so that people continue to feel tethered to the business, right? So we've counseled our clients to host as many or as appropriate virtual town hall type things, so that we can at least have this type of interaction.
Mhm.
And interestingly, we've also encouraged our clients that this is a time to be bold. I think we all know that, and history has shown us, in the crucible of crises is often when ingenuity and innovation happens. Right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Because necessity is the mother of invention, and then in the midst of the pandemic, right, this perfect storm of racial inequality and social injustice, the murder of George Floyd, and having to speak out and be a voice on that. And again, partnering, counseling, advising clients, be bold, share your point of view. Our people want to hear from us on these issues.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. And so when you say clients, just to clarify for our audience, you're talking about leadership and departmental leaders within the enterprise.
That's right. Within Wells Fargo, we too call them clients.
Okay.
And so, yes, those are the people with whom we partner and offer counsel.
Perfect. So you could pick any one of those issues that you outlined that have happened in 2020, the most bizarre year, obviously, in our lifetime. Pick one of those and just kind of talk to us about, anecdotally, how, I guess how you first heard about it, or how it began to impact the business, and what your team's response has been, and what were some of the lessons learned. I know that's a loaded question, so take your time.
Okay, well, and I'll unpack it as we go. Let's start with the death of George Floyd, and I personally deliberately refer to it as a murder. And so one of the things that we realized was that it was a moment, right? Because no longer could we turn away. It was right there in our faces, right? I referred to it as a high-tech lynching because, and so I think individuals and organizations, the calculus has changed. Some folks say, well, a corporation, that's not their business. Yeah. But when you've got an organization with a set of vision and values, and we talk about our values of diversity, equity, inclusion, and representation, we must speak out. And I've gotten increasingly clear about that, and the role of any organization. And I think that employees, what we call team members at Wells Fargo, they expect their organization to have a voice and a point of view on these things. And so, for example, I've got a team. I've got folks in LA that I work with, and it's a lot of fun. I've got a team in the Atlantic region, and we were working on messaging in response to the murder of George Floyd. And the team, some with not the seniority that I enjoy, but younger folk, right? There was a kind of an uncertainty, like, how far can I push this message? And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to write the message for my leaders, and I'll share it with you. And when I did, you could hear this collective exhale, because they said, oh, wow, you bold. Like, right. And I said, absolutely, be bold. Yeah. Because again, it's in these moments where we can advance the conversation and advance the common good. So that's an example. And then I'm happy to talk about the pandemic if you'd like.
Sure, please.
Well, we all enter the new year and we're cruising along. And then suddenly, my estimation, it was roughly early to mid-March
Mhm.
when we realized, ruh-roh, something's different, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was probably into late March, early April that the fullness of the impact
Okay.
will hit us, right?
Yeah.
And crises are an interesting thing because sometimes if you do the post-crises analysis, it's like, okay, so at what point
Hmm.
did it tip?
Right.
And for us, it tipped when, and I'm gonna in Washington D.C., where I happen to have an office just a block and a half from the White House, someone had contact was COVID-19 positive, had gotten it through church at a church service and had come into the office. So we were immediately told, do not come in,
Right.
et cetera. And then that migrated to a enterprise-wide, corporate-wide, everyone now must work from home, other than those who were frontline, like in branches and things like that.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, the challenges of a pandemic from a communication perspective and things that we've done to address those challenges.
Yeah. When you said earlier about being bold, it makes me think that I'm kind of well known for saying, be smart and be brief. And maybe I'll add a little third punch in there of be bold. But yeah, that's kind of one of my mantras for people is, hey, be smart, be brief. And, maybe I'll figure out a way to add be bold in that. So I really like that. That's a good tip.
You're listening to On Top of PR with your host, Jason Mudd. Jason is a trusted advisor to some of America's most admired and fastest growing brands. He is the managing partner at Axia Public Relations, a PR agency that guides news, social, and web strategies for national companies. And now, back to the show.
I love where we're going with this because part of our agenda, part of the topic today is being a trusted advisor, right, to your clients and to leadership. And you're giving some examples now of being a trusted advisor, both to your team or maybe even your subordinates, but also to the leadership of the organization. So kind of walk us through just a few things that are top of mind for you when it comes to, Del, being a trusted advisor to, the people who are looking to you for communication strategies and communications leadership.
Well, and Jason, I'm so glad we're talking about this. I actually penned an op-ed, an article at the request of PRSA earlier this year that has since been published and been picked up and repurposed. And it's titled "Accidental Karma: The Journey of One Trusted Advisor." And so I'm 61 years old. So my career's now spanned, I'm guessing it's going into 37th or 38th year. It probably wasn't until I was about 10 years into my career when I really caught the bug on the trusted advisor thing. And that was at AT&T American Transtech. But prior to that, and I think others are probably have had this experience or are guilty of this, I found myself when I heard people talking about strategic counselor, and I felt that was something so aspirational.
Yeah.
Perhaps it was a birthright that it was beyond me.
Yeah. Okay.
And often I think if you in the literature, sometimes it's positioned that way, like you've got it in your DNA, or and perhaps for others they haven't had that experience, but that was my experience.
Sure.
And what I discovered is it's really through the rough and tumble of time and experience that you find your place as a trusted advisor. And so that's fundamentally what this article talks about. And what I think, or what are the characteristics? It's, they're the basic things that are the cost of entry, right? That's be smart, be strategic, et cetera. But what I've discovered where you can really help those that are aspiring to get there are more, not the obvious things. And here's an example. And I was having this conversation today. And that is one of the things that I do when I counsel my team and those with whom I work or who are younger. And that is, I'll say, understand the way your leaders think. And more often than not, they're in the position they're in because they're smart and they want to be quick. So when they ask for information, give them the answer and then back into explaining, etc. You know, we've all fallen victim through the years of someone ask a question and we give this preamble, etc. And I can see in clients' faces, they're immediately turned off. It's boom, give them what they need and then give them the background, right?
Yeah. Give them the message and then support it with facts. Yeah.
That's right. And I think it's really too about relationship building and understanding the way your clients are wired. You know, some have suggested, oh, you mean be a chameleon. Well, I think, you know, identify, because not all clients are cut out of the same cloth. So understanding, I've got clients with whom I text constantly, others who don't even want to go there, you know, and so things along those lines, but and also understanding the business. So you can be of counsel, not only about communication, but really about operationally the way the business can be run, which will then help you in how you communicate it.
You know, you're making me think of a great tip I got years ago from somebody who I think is really talented. And they said they came into a job very similar to yours, I would say. And, you know, they were the new leader and everybody else was kind of incumbent employees. And some people had been there for a decade. And when he was kind of interviewing or meeting with them for the first time, one question he asked everybody was, tell me how our company makes money. And then the next question was, tell me how our division that you work for, that you know, because they had clients too in their internal group. How does that division make money? And he said anybody who couldn't answer that question in detail or, you know, with some consideration immediately moved to the pile of, I don't know if they're going to be around much longer.
Yeah, they probably didn't make the short list for a day.
Right? And what he said is there are people that had been there 15 years and didn't understand the first thing of how the company makes money, where the expenses go. All they knew is I write this newsletter and it's the most important thing in my life, you know? And so that was eye-opening to me. And at my agency, I took that back and I said, the first thing we got to find out is how do our clients make money? And then how do we align PR with, you know, that same objective? And, you know, we're in the business of creating new social and web strategies and services, but if those don't align with what the company's trying to do and where the company's going and how the company makes money, you got to be really careful you're not completely focused on vanity versus, you know, what's important to the organization.
Well, that's right. And I think, you know, we earn our place at the table, right?
Yes.
We table by not only understanding the innards and ins and outs of communications and strategy, but the business we're in. Again, so that you can be of counsel, not only, you know, to how this needs to be communicated, the message, the narrative, et cetera, and how it needs to be executed against which channels, but understanding operationally, which is just going to make your communication more relevant and rich.
Absolutely. Del, two things. One, you've reminded me of I don't know if it's a parable or what, but, you know, it says wisdom comes from experience. And when you're talking about yourself and your clients, and how they got in those roles, it's because of that experience. And so eventually you start to develop gut instincts. You've been there before, you know where this is going. You can see around that corner because you've been at that intersection, right? And
here, I mean, isn't that invaluable?
Yeah.
I love the fact that I am a seasoned professional now, right? And that I have earned my stripes and that, you know, and as acknowledged by others, that I have the gravitas to command the room and the attention of those who I'm counseling, right? And it's, you know, go back to the example of the racial inequality and George Floyd murder, and the team was a bit, you know, hesitant, and I went, be bold. I'm real clear about that. And by the way, we're going to be bold, and if someone questions it, it's like, okay, what part of that message of boldness do you disagree with? Because that's a different conversation. Put the onus on them.
Yeah. Well, and I think if you're not bold, you just, as you said earlier, I think you blend in, you're camouflage. People, if, you know, I tell people all the time, look, be candid, because candid clears the clutter and candid makes it very clear what you're trying to say and what you're trying to do. And if you're beating around the bush, I may not hear you, you know? And so, you know, anytime I've had issues boil up within our organization, whether it's with internal or external audiences, it's because somebody somewhere wasn't being candid enough that they were truly being heard. You were whispering something about this, but it wasn't clear to me that you were wishing you could be shouting, right? Or
and so in those kinds of situations, in my experience, it does not instill confidence, right? And
Right.
I often, an expression I use with both my clients, my colleagues, and those that are coming up in the profession is, be you, boo. Authenticity will never, ever steer you wrong. It may on occasion rub some people the wrong way. It may slow you down temporarily, but ultimately it will advance you. Be you, boo. And that folds into being a trusted advisor, because if you're comfortable in your own skin, it allows others to be comfortable in their own skin.
And around you as well, so they can be more transparent. Yeah, I love that.
Right.
So the second thing I had for you is, and then we're going to, I think, transition to the next topic, but I know I have this question, so I assume our audience will too. Give us an example. When you say clients in your organization, are we talking about regional vice presidents, product line leaders? Kind of help me understand that.
Well, it's up and down the food chain. So operationally, we have what we call the community bank. Those are the branches that you see out in the community.
Sure. And retail branches.
I'm sorry?
The retail branches.
That's right. Okay. And so I have a lead region president, our vernacular LRP, who oversees the Atlantic region. Okay. And he has RBPs, region bank presidents, that are like in Charlotte or in Richmond or in DC or in Maryland, et cetera, et cetera. So the LRP, the lead region president over the entire region, is my primary client. But I also, with my team, show the love to these RBPs as well.
Okay.
And then we organizationally, within our corporate communication line of business, people that I'm fortunate to work with, collaborate with, and offer counsel to as well.
Excellent. Del, we could have you on for several episodes, I know, and talk about a lot of things. Wow. One of the things that I know you wanted to talk about, and I'm pleased to do that today, would be just to share with our audience about the upcoming PRSA, Public Relations Society of America, ICON International Conference that was originally scheduled to be in Nashville. And as we were talking about earlier, one of our colleagues was going to go there, present our $2,000 annual scholarship to a PR student there. Unfortunately, because of COVID, it's gone viral. But fortunately, that allows more people to attend. It allows more companies to send more people because of the virtual nature of it. And now people from anywhere, anytime can come, using any device, you said. So I hope I didn't steal your thunder, but tell us more.
You've set that up beautifully. And, let's go back to the pandemic, because March leads into April. And I have the great pleasure this year of chairing PRSA's International Conference, and have been connected with PRSA staff and other leaders, a committee, since the first of the year. But it was probably not until mid-April that I suddenly went, ruh-roh, are we going to have a face-to-face conference in Nashville? That was so far out,
right?
And yet you saw things dropping like flies along the way. Yeah. And we had to make a very critical strategic decision at a certain point. Go, no go. Yeah. And of course, member safety was paramount. And so yes, PRSA, the world's largest organization for public relations and communications professional, will host its first ever ICON International Conference that was to be in Nashville, Tennessee, and now will be virtual. So and be there no matter where you are in the world. And it will be coming to a device near you.
Yeah.
And it will now be spread. PRSA's conferences are usually 2 days, 2.5 days, a Sunday to a Tuesday. This time, the conference is going to start on Monday, October 26th, and go to Thursday, October 29th.
Okay.
And I've got some interesting research and learnings that I've discovered when you go virtual, and why we stretch from 2 days to 4, if you'd like to hear about that. And I'll go there in a moment. But what the delay in launching our conference allowed us to do was just blow up everything and reconsider what we need this conference to be in this moment.
Right. Yeah,
And
sure.
a moment of global pandemic, in a moment of continued disinformation, in a moment of racial inequality and social injustice. And so our conference theme is timely. It is strategic communications, navigating a world disrupted.
Nice.
And
Okay.
we're thrilled. Our lineup of speakers is fantastic. We will open on Monday, the 26th, with John Meacham.
Okay.
And John Meacham, as I'm sure all your viewers know, is a presidential biographer, a historian, and a very respected voice of reason in this space of governance, politics, and civility. And then on Tuesday, the 27th, we are all about diversity, equity, and inclusion and representation. And we've a fabulous, fierce speaker. Her name is Carolyn Johnson. She is the CEO of Diversity Inc. Media.
Okay.
And so she will join us on Tuesday. Wednesday is all about disinformation and our First Amendment. And behind the First Amendment, it's 5 freedoms. And four of those 5 freedoms of the First Amendment are particularly applicable to public relations.
Sure.
That is assembly, petition, speech, and press.
Okay.
And we've got a speaker who will join us, Nina Jankowicz. She is a disinformation fellow at the Wilson Center, and she's going to just talk about the world in which we now live with disinformation and its impacts on our democracy and our elections, etc. And then later in the day, we're going to have a marvelous human being and a very smart person, Lotta Knott, who is the executive director of the First Amendment Center at the Freedom Forum.
Oh, I know the Freedom Forum well.
And then Thursday, we will wrap and focused on the pandemic. And we will hear from Laurie Garrett, who is a internationally recognized scientist, journalist, Pulitzer Prize winning, etc. So it's a very good lineup. And there will be, in the midst of all that, people go to conferences, right, for networking. They want to hang out with folks they haven't seen all year. They want to sit at the bar. They want social activities, and we're going to have that too. The platform that we will be using is through a company called 6 Connect, CONNEX, and I think a barrier that we have anticipated is that some folks may say, "Oh, I'm on Zoom meetings all day. I can't do another Zoom."
Right.
This ain't Zoom. This is a totally different gee whiz wow experience. Going to be filled with good professional content and social networking opportunities as well. There are few professions, only a handful, that are founded and grounded in our Constitution and its rights, and in particularly our First Amendment, right? Sure. In terms of speech, assembly, petition, and press. And so I think that those topics and the issues that come out of that are particularly relevant to we as public relations professionals.
And perhaps, and please pardon this expression because I don't like it, but perhaps now more than ever.
That's right.
Yeah.
And by the way, you will be receiving, as a PRSA member, and hopefully your viewers as well, you are going to be receiving twice a week between now and late October emails promoting the conference. And some of the messaging you're going to hear is truly now more than ever.
Right.
And it reminds me of in 2001, 9/11 happened, and PRSA was to convene 6 weeks later in Atlanta. And much like then, if there's ever been a time we need to come together collectively to collaborate and understand this world disrupted, it's now.
Yeah. So we have run out of time, but I want you to share just a tiny bit about the College of Fellows with PRSA. That's something that was on my to-do list for 2020. And even though they extended the deadline with the pandemic, I had to take care of my clients first before I took care of myself. And so talk about College of Fellows, what it is, your process of getting in, and what have been the benefit of being a College of Fellows since.
Certainly. Well, so the College of Fellows is an organization within PRSA, and the college is considered the preeminent, if you will, exclusive group. Requirements for consideration are at least 20 years in the industry, and the college is very deliberate about looking at your background. And if you left the field for a year and a half to go, then that doesn't count. And then you have to complete a rigorous application. And based on my own experience, I've encouraged others, if you're going to apply for the fellows and you know you meet the requirements, give yourself 4 or 5 months to complete the application. And the application is both a sobering but exciting thing in my experience, because it captures the body of your work in this industry. And in fact, when I completed my College of Fellows application, I gave it to my mother, who said, "What is it you do?" And I handed it to her and I said, "Mother, read this. This is what I do."
Yeah.
And I think one of the many benefits of the college is being with seasoned colleagues who have the experience and insight to give you counsel, right? People to whom you can turn and pick up the phone and say, I've got this situation. Let's, how can you help?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. Thanks for being part of the show. This has been a great episode, and I look forward to having you back. As we have an opportunity to talk more about the variety of topics, and maybe we'll connect on. I know this is part of your wheelhouse of expertise, but perhaps in the future we'll connect on an episode just about diversity and inclusion.
Oh, that is something I welcome, and I did want to mention, and you inspired this comment earlier. You talked about you have a saying that's something about be brief, and you might add be bold.
Yeah.
It inspired me to remember a famous quote by Franklin Delano Roosevelt about public speaking, and it was, "Be brief, be relevant, be seated."
There we go. Nice. I like that. Well, thank you, Del. Thanks for a great show.
Jason, thank you.
This has been On Top of PR with Jason Mudd, presented by Review Maxer.